Hi YouTube! I have learned from Signe, my daughter, that book reviews are popular, so I'll try my second ever. I am very proud to say that I've read Ken Follett's trilogy of this century, and as you see, they're pretty thick and fat, these books, 900 to 1,000 pages. And yes, I wish I bought all of them not in paperback, but I did 2 paperbacks and 1 solid. Obviously I must have liked them since I read all 3 and close to 3,000 pages. Why did I like them? Because they are about this century. The story starts early 1900s, before the First World War. And the whole concept is that Ken Follett writes about different families in different countries, and each book is about one generation. So the first book is about First World War area. Second book is about Second World War time and what's leading up to that. And the third one actually ends by the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. So it's very interesting, this concept of following these 3 families, getting to know people and see what happens with them. And it's kind of European and world history in a more kind of say low-key family concept of how people were affected. Obviously Ken Follett is a thriller author, so it's very well written from that perspective. You want to see what happens, and sometimes people are in danger, and sometimes, you know, different things happen to people in the families that you don't necessarily expect. It's 2 families, I believe, from the United States, 1+1 family that kind of merges a little bit in the UK, 1 very interesting and important family in Germany, and 1 family in Russia. And also one of the guys from Russia is actually emigrating to the US, so that's becoming the second US family. What I do like a lot is how history affects families, and how their daily life is affected, and their thinking and daily happenings, falling in love during the war, all this kind of stuff. But that's also a key word of some of the things that I think Ken Follett could do better. He should probably stay as a thriller author and not always try to talk or find different ways of making a love story when people connect in this book, because sometimes they're very well written and sometimes it's a little bit awkward, and you're thinking that, okay, this guy is not really a romantic author. The first one is actually The Fall of the Giants, maybe the one I like the best, from the perspective that you're really following people at low class, low level in society, maybe with the exception of a couple of people. Some of these families are making kind of say a journey during the 3 generations into more important positions, if you like, or more fame and richness. And it's, for instance, in number 2, Winter Over the World, which is then about Second World War. I love the way they describe, you know, how Germany is changing and why actually Hitler got elected and all that. At the same time, it becomes a little bit obvious, for instance, that in one of the US families, the family is traveling to Hawaii to visit their son, who's in the Navy, in December 1941. And obviously it's the same weekend or the same dates as Pearl Harbor, so that's kind of say how he describes that. That's a little bit awkward every now and then. At the same time, I think he's still staying with the personal touch when he's talking about the American Navy and the guy there afterwards, so by all means. Also very good description of elements from the war that I didn't know about, and I've been reading a lot about Second World War before. For instance, that they were smuggling people from France into Spain, which is at the time was a fascist country under Franco, but still more open to the world and less involved in the war. So, for instance, British pilots that were shot down over France were smuggled back over the Pyrenees into Spain. Those kind of stories I really liked, and of course that was part of the families that this happened to. The last one, which is about you know, at the edge of eternity, which is then after Second World War, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, I think is also really, really good. Maybe a little bit awkward around some of the stuff in the 60s and the hippies and all that, but especially the German family, which you get to know very well in the second book, and And the third book, I think it's really well written also about how the family is divided between the West and the East, how some people are trying then to escape from the East to the West when the wall is coming, and all that stuff is really, really cool. And because you know them, this family really well, it's the third generation, and they really feel for them on how this all happens. And I think by the end of the day, also the Russian description is actually quite cool to me. The the life in Russia and how people kind of say, were affected by different happenings during this century is really well described versus anything else I've seen. So also for people not my generation in the 50s, but also younger people, I think you would actually love to read this and get kind of say the last 100 years history, or a bit less than that, into a perspective of families that you get to know and families that you really get to like. Some people are not that likable, but that's how it should be. In general, you want to turn the page and read about the next story, and it's basically a chapter or 2 or 3 or 4 about one family, and then suddenly you're jumping to Russia, and then you're jumping back to the US, and you see different things happening in parallel. So great books, great read. Takes a bit of time, almost 3,000 pages, but I did finish, and it was because I liked them. So that's my recommendation.
No, by YouTube.
Bye YouTube.